Hi. Actually, I'm listening to a previous panel. I find that quite a few would overlap. Sometimes may have a little bit different view. Some of those will be similar, but I think it's going to be fun. I usually am known as someone who speaks the most crazy stuff at the conferences. But thankfully, this year seems to be an exception because what I'm going to talk about is something that a lot of people talk about right now, where industry is moving forward and what you need to do as a developer. All right. So a little bit of history again. Back in 1998. I had a task as a part of EA office to figure out the market size of Korean game industry. Back in the days, there was no Yuju or Super Data, so I had to manually compile all the announce the revenues of game companies in Korea and whatnot, and it turns out to be 50 million. This is not a mistake. Nowadays, it's even smaller than the budget of game development nowadays, but that was the size of the market. That's why a lot of my friends ridicule me working in a childish ghetto industry. Well, wow, can't really see. But it changed quite a bit, right? In 2018, the Korean game industry is now 5.6 billion. Not bad, right? And then it means that it grew over 100 times over the last 20 years. But Korea is not the only country that's having this sort of growth, right? So according to Yuju, global game industry reached 135 billion as of 2018, and then roughly half of that is from mobile game, and then the rest but evenly split between console and PC. If you were here in previous panel, you should remember where the ad price talks about in 2007, game market started to explode, and then it didn't cannibalize other market, but it has essentially added up and create new market, right? What happens in 2007? iPhone came out, right? So essentially, this was more or less the market that existed in the past, and mobile essentially doubled the size of a gaming market, but not cannibalizing existing PC or console. And then in the past, 10, 15 years ago, we always talked about similar to Ed and Chris's talk. So we always talked about how can we be better and bigger than movie all the time. And then recently I realized that no one talks about it anymore. And then I actually looked it up to the numbers to figure out what happened there, and realized that actually global box office now is just 1/3 of gaming. No wonder we don't talk about it any further. So a little bit of a history on how game, as a looking just at the numbers, how we grew so far, and then where we are going from here. I find this year, 2019, is really interesting in a way that fundamentally a lot of things are changing. I'm not talking about the gameplay itself, you are not here to listen to how to develop a fun gameplay. As someone who's looking at the business side of things, the fundamental changes are happening everywhere, starting with the platforms. It used to be, as you've been seeing the previous slide, it used to be PC, console, and mobile. So what kind of form factor you have decides on what kind of gameplay you are, what kind of game you play. Also, it is what kind of screen size or control scheme you are using. So that is starting to get really blurred. And then Distribution-wise, it is also seeing a quite of different direction of path. I'm going to talk about a little later. And then the business model is also changing quite a bit. And like eSports is kind of like leading the way of watching as gameplay. And then this is something that many people are not really realizing, don't see it yet, even though the about 3 points are like a lot of people are talking about already. So in terms of what do I mean by globalization, you hear it first. So getting back to platform and distribution. So there are two big trends that is going on right now in terms of how platforms are changing. One direction is that a lot of like mobile device makers like Samsung or Razer, Asus, and so on, they are like thinking through the way to how you can create hybrid devices that essentially like your mobile phone, when you go back to your home and then sitting down on your desk, it becomes a desktop computer. When you bring it to the your living room, it becomes a like console. So there has been a lot of experiment going on from the companies. You may or may not heard about them, but those effort to create that form factor is actually accelerating. And then cloud gaming comes out. If you think about what cloud gaming promises you, is actually not too different from what these hybrid devices are trying to do. Essentially, it allows you to play any game, anywhere, without friction. This is actually a really important point. And then the like channel or distribution channel is actually diversifying, right? Over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, essentially the like Apple, Google, and Steam are the de facto monopoly in game distribution on PC and mobile. That, of course, also the on consoles, each platform owner like owns their own distribution channel. It is starting to, I think that it's starting to see the disruption there too. Like you all know about Epic Games, but in EU last year they ruled that the Google's policy of having Google Play Store only in the phones in EU is illegal, which means that the device makers are now can have their own app store without Google Play Store. What kind of change it will bring in China, as there is no Play Store, like there are like a bunch of different third-party app stores, and also the device makers, they have their own app store. That will certainly make a lot of changes going forward. Even in US, Apple is being under lawsuit right now for their behavior or policy over like iOS App Store. So this is still sort of starting to change, but I think that this will have a quite fundamental impact on how game is distributed and developed, and what kind of game you make because of that. And then the business model. So game as a service and free-to-play. Like this is not a new concept, as you know. This has been around over 20 years. I myself has been engaging in this model like in my whole career over 22 years. But now the change is that now this is becoming a like mainstream business model, even with the AAA publishers in the West. So if you looked at the financial conferences, it was really sad to me because everyone is asking EA, Activision, Ubisoft, Take-Two, that what is your reaction to Fortnite and Battle Royale? Why your game doesn't have that? And like to me, it is sad because if you've been working on a like BioWare, if you've been working on a narrative-based single-player game, the type of JAS, FTP is the last thing you should do. But right now, the like pressure is on AAA publishers. Regardless of their skill set, they are asked to do game as a service and free-to-play. And then there is a subscription as cloud gaming, Stadia, and Microsoft Game Pass, whatnot. As they are coming in, how can you thrive in this environment, this business model? What kind of like monetization model you can have? This is something that if you are game developers, just think about if you're not game designer. And then, to me, this subscription is actually the counter first against the game as a service trend, because when you have a subscription, what is more important is that not exactly the the type of microtransaction you have, what kind of interaction and engagement you have with your community is what will drive your revenue. So the hopefully I think that this will be showing us the way back to the thinking more about engaging, not to nickel and dime players. So so esports has been exploding, as everyone here know. And then if you're a game developer / publisher, there is no other way for you but to think about streaming, what kind of VOD, and then what sort of the esports strategy you need to have. And then in the case of esports especially, someone who's been engaging in esports has been thinking a lot about the big question is that how to monetize esports. I will get back to this point a little bit later. So this is the point I mentioned about the globalization. So, like I said already, game as a service, free to play, mobile, traditionally has been the main business model in East. And then the West, console and triple play, single play narrative-based games, and then now cloud gaming is coming in. So what I'm trying to say here is that the East and West game industry market player behavior, they were kind of growing, but slightly in different ways. And that it created different business model and then different way of perceive your game. That kind of insulated each market from each other, in my belief. By the way, when I talked about West, here actually Japan is part of the West because Japan has been the traditionally console game country for the longest time. Now with all these changes, what I see is that now the Western game companies, so Western publishers, developers, they all start to embrace traditionally Asian business model, all the way to game business. And then the East is also will be heavily impacted by cloud gaming. To me, actually, what will Stadia will be able to do in the East, it will determine how big cloud gaming will be, because it will remove the friction, the reason why console has never been successful in the East. So really interesting thing to watch. So, and then, by now, I think that every one of you guys should have heard that Netflix, in their Q4 financial report, they talked about Fortnite and gaming as their competitor instead of HBO or Disney or other people. Apart from the fact that they wanted to diss their own close competitors, why they were talking about it? So, actually, if you look at the numbers, this is actually a very true and already happened, ongoing, that the number of people who's watching YouTube games channel and then Twitch are bigger than streaming services out there. As of 2018. Also, the number of people who's watching esports is already bigger than some of the larger professional sports like NHL, MLB. Then why aren't we? If this is already happening and then we are already actively stealing or grabbing the market share from this TV, video, whatever, then why aren't we hear about that at all? Because we don't make money from it. Even though a lot of people are watching, the revenue from esports overall is still a peanut. So this is actually, to me, wrong, because you are killing your competitor, and then you're not benefiting from it. there gotta be something that can be done, and then this is, I think, that the way you should approach esports going forward, or game playing, as watching as gameplay mechanics on that. So this is the way I think about like game industry right now. $135 billion market is not game industry. It is a part of the game industry. The real thing is that it is actually much bigger. $1.9 trillion is right now known as the size of entertainment industry. I think that this is the real potential, real size of game industry. How much we can get carved out from this as of now, as in 2019, no one knows, right? I don't know. But what can be done to grab as much of this as possible is essentially what I've been thinking about, and then what I've been like strategically planning on for quite a while. So one thing I can tell you here is that within the next 5 years, I believe that there will be games with $5 billion revenue annual. So just as in 20 years ago, Korean game industries, the overall output or revenue was essentially the like budget of a like single game nowadays. The 5 billion market size of Korea as of today will be one game's revenue in 5 years' time. In fact, I believe that we'll see like probably 3 to 5 games like that because of all the changes that is happening, and then all the clever way to like monetize it and then grow the market size, like new ways of doing things and that. At the same time, this doesn't mean that it will be up for grab for everyone. Even though the big market itself is bigger, the competition will be more fierce. Now, for the first time ever, everyone in the East and everyone in the West now will be competing together in this market. And then that's why the winner will take much bigger pie out of this industry. So the question to you guys is, and also to me is, are you ready? So I believe that this year is when you really think about, is this something that you should do about, right? And then someone who has done their homework and then figure out a way to create a great game that can actually thrive in this environment will be the next, I guess, Blizzard. I don't really have a time to talk about like, so what? Like, what am I doing to thrive in this environment, or what Super Evil is doing to counter this trend? But like, hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to talk about our next title, and then what makes us believe that this will be the next big thing. So thank you. I think it was a Q&A session. If anyone has a question?
We probably have time to take a question if someone has a question for Taewon. I'll just run the mic over to you so that you...
Hi, I have a question about the market share that you had for, thanks, under the slide about what is TV. The eSports bar that you saw, where are those consumers coming from? Like, are eSports taking viewers from NBA and NFL? Are these new people altogether to TV, or are these gamers that are now not gaming, they're watching instead?
So you are referring to this one?
The next slide, I believe.
Oops, sorry. This one?
Yeah.
Right.
So where are these esports people coming from?
These are the essentially game players.
Oh, so they're players that are, instead of playing, they're...
Yes, this is essentially people who's watching esports, right? So this is not mutually exclusive. So they may be watching NHL, but the thing is that this number has been decreasing quite a bit, while this has been explosively growing. And actually, in case of like sports people, they actually feel the life and death situation. Like they already feel that like we are dying. So if you think about the like what's happening in esports scene right now, a lot of investment is coming in from the like sports organization, like sports stars. They're doing it to survive. That's why you see a lot of investment from sports into esports right now.